to call the meeting to order. First item would be roll call, then pledge of allegiance.
Mr. Parrish?
Here.
Mr. Burns? Mr. Kirscher?
Here.
Mr. Waterville?
Here.
Mr. Burkmeyer?
Here.
All right, next we'll have pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item would be the approval of the minutes of the February 28th, 2023 meeting. I wasn't there, so I won't make a motion, but I did notice on the page 2, second from the last paragraph, it says of the plat, there's probably a word missing, whatever. Plat were listed or whatever. Do you have the minutes?
I don't, I have it, I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me.
Okay. It's just a minor typo, but, so if you could correct that. So I'll entertain a motion then, subject to that minor correction, to approve the minutes.
Move approval of February minutes.
Second. Okay, second. Roll call?
Mr. Parrish?
Yes.
Mr. Kirscher?
Yes.
Mr. Waterville?
Yes.
Mr. Burkmeyer?
Yes.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Next item, item 3 is a conditional use permit application for a hotel on the 600 block of Prairie Boulevard. Recommendation to council, it's up for recommendation to council. I call the city administrator. John, do you want to give us your recommendation and comments?
Thank you. We have an application for a conditional use permit for a hotel in the 600 block of Prairie Boulevard. So this is proposed to be located south of the O'Reilly's Auto Parts store. So that's on the east side of the road, and it would be on the current dead end of Prairie Boulevard, and that would be south of State Route 64. The applicant has enclosed a site plan and a portion of the undeveloped portion of parcel 9656051, which is a part of the amphitheater property. This undeveloped portion would be 2.96 acres, and that would be for the proposed hotel. It's 4 stories and would contain 100 guest rooms. The applicant is providing 144 parking spaces, 125 are provided. The site plan does show that there's a utility easement. It's a telephone easement, and it's on the site plan, and it's to the south of the site. So the hotel is not in the easement. The applicant has also provided some elevation drawings of a proposed franchisee, and so to give you an idea of what the final project would look like. And again, the site plan is for conditional use permit approval only, so the applicant would have to come back to the Planning Commission and City Council to address the requirements of site plan review section, which would be landscaping, lighting, signage, utility improvements. The applicant has also provided a market feasibility study, which was enclosed in your packet, and it shows that there is a market for this particular use in this area. The city has 7 conditions of recommended approval if the Planning Commission would want to consider those, but those are also listed for your review.
John, since we do have people to tell us, could you explain, or we can have council explain the conditional use, just what the ordinance reads on that in terms of its applicability here?
A conditional use is a use that's permitted in a district with conditions, essentially. So it's not a permitted use by right, but it is permitted if certain conditions of operation, construction, location can be put on the use, and then we have a public hearing at the Planning Commission level, and then it goes to council, so for their consideration. So it's a conditional use review of a zoning permit, essentially.
All right, and also, maybe you can mention, we do have an commercial overlay zone. Could you just touch bases on that also?
Commercial overlay district, what that would entail is, you know, that the applicant has to provide elevation drawings, information in regards to the exterior appearance of the building, landscaping, signage. The planning commission and council can take a look at that and determine whether that, you know, meets the standards of the commercial overlay district, and that is a part of the conditional use permit approval.
And with the special uses, there are continuing monitoring in that situation?
Right, so after, if this would be forwarded to council, and if council would approve the conditional use permit, the applicant would have to return to the planning commission and council with a detailed site plan. So the detailed site plan would be part of the conditional use approval. So it would have to meet all the requirements of the conditions of approval, and then it would also have to meet the requirements of the planning commission in regards to the commercial overlay district, landscaping, lighting, signage, that type of thing.
And if any subsequent issues arise, can that be addressed?
Yes, as a part of any conditional use permit, the planning commission and city council can periodically review that conditional use to make sure that it is following the conditions of the original approval, and then that it's conforming with the site plan as it was approved by the planning commission and city council.
All right, so just say in essence, that they're asking for something that fits within the description that you just described, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, so is there a recommendation then by the administration on this?
We would recommend the approval of the conditional use permit according to the 7 conditions of approval. Condition number 1, the applicant will submit a revised and detailed site plan which addresses the requirements contained in chapter 1146 of the city zoning ordinance, including a landscaping exterior lighting plan designed to screen the facility from residential areas located to the east for final review by the planning commission and city council. 2, the applicant will submit detailed colored elevation drawings for the proposed exterior of the hotel, which will include the materials and colors used in the design of the hotel. The proposed hotel development will comply with the commercial overlay district requirements contained in chapter 1140 of the zoning ordinance. 3, detailed engineering construction drawings for all roadway, water, sanitary, storm, sewer improvements will be submitted for review and approval of the city engineer. 4, a water line will be extended onto the parcel for fire protection, which will include at least one in the front of the building and one in the rear. The fire chief will have final review and approval of the proposed locations of the fire line. The fire lane, as depicted in the rear of the building on the current site plan, will be maintained in the final site plan to ensure access for fire protection. 5, the hotel design will require all guests to enter through the lobby or foyer area, and access to all rooms shall be from an interior hallway. The hotel shall be adequately staffed by on-site personnel 24 hours per day, 7 days a week, to maintain the premises in a safe and sanitary condition at all times. No portion of the hotel shall be used as a permanent residence, and the term hotel excludes the terms dwelling, dwelling two-family, dwelling multi-unit, or apartment house as defined in the zoning ordinance. As defined in the Waterville zoning ordinance, cooking facilities are not permitted in individual hotel rooms. Each transient guest occupancy of the hotel premises shall not exceed 30 consecutive days within a 12-month period. 6, upon final approval of the conditional use permit and site plan by the planning commission and city council, the property owner applicant will complete a parcel split of approximately 2.96 acres of the hotel site from parcel 9656051, and the last condition is that the agreement to all the conditions of approval by the applicant or operator as necessary for the issuance of a final zoning permit for this project. If you look in the zoning code, you look at the terms dwelling, dwelling two-family, dwelling multi-unit, or apartment house, they're similar to a hotel. So the idea is to state that, you know, the hotel is a hotel. It's not to be confused with a dwelling unit, and it's not to be confused as a permanent residence.
So the staff is recommending approval subject to all the conditions that you just
Yes.
detailed verbally?
Yes.
Okay. All right, at this point then, is the applicant present? Okay. Sir, if you want to step up to the mic there and identify yourself for the record. I would note that I received 2 citizen requests to address the Waterville City Council. I'm not sure if that's just for a general request or if it's specific to one of the 2 matters that are up here. But in any event, if someone has that after the applicant after you give your presentation, then I'll see if somebody would, if you want to speak to this or later. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. My name is Gary Younger. I'm here on behalf of DFG Waterville Landing, the owner of the property on at 600 Gray Boulevard. Members of Land Commission, Mr. Gokenauer and Mr. Downbeat. I think John's write-up and staff report is very complete. It gives, everything I agree with, we agree with the conditions that were placed on the approval. As far as, I'd like to give you a little background on the how we got to a hotel for this location. We had a feasibility study done by HVS Hospitality Consultants. They're probably the biggest hospitality consulting firm worldwide. And it called for exactly what John outlined in his staff report, a 100-room all-suite hotel. I do want to clarify one thing. He mentions Marriott in there. Well, we're going to be talking to probably 6 or 8 hotel brands when we go out to find the one that would be best suited for this location. Marriott, we have not had any contact with Marriott at this point, but the consultant sent us the information on Marriott and a layout that would be very similar to what we're going to be proposing when we do our final submission.
Yeah, I think that's what the consultant indicated in their report, that
Yeah.
You haven't had any, but that they assume that it would be comparable.
Comparable to
Right.
the Marriott layout.
Right.
But other than that, that's really all I have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have regarding the project.
Any questions?
I mean, I do want to mention that it meets the qualifications of your comprehensive 2012 master plan also, as far as a hotel in this location.
And what's your thoughts on how it would be, the availability would be servicing the population of Waterville?
Population of Waterville, the traffic that's nearby, I mean, it would draw certainly a larger radius than just local.
I assume if you had family or family come into town and didn't have adequate room in your home, this would be a convenient.
I think this would be a great addition to the community,
Mm-hmm.
a great service
Mm-hmm.
that's not here now.
And then usually the applicant, would you be maintaining ownership of the hotel then? Would you be maintaining?
We may be part of the development and owning the real estate. We may not, but we will not be operating the hotel.
Yeah, but as far as ownership, then
But
that's,
as far as ownership, we're open to that, depending on what we work out with the
okay,
operator we choose.
okay. And what would be your, assuming conditional approval, what would be your development schedule and possible?
We would be, once we get the conditional use approval, we
Yeah.
would like to get that
projected time frame opening? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I would think, I would certainly think it's a 6 to 9 month project, depending on
Okay.
whether in time when we start.
Okay, and then as far as opening or whatever, the 6 to 9 months opening?
Yes, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions from the panel? I have requested for a citizen address time as, either one of those individuals, Matt or Timothy. Did you want to address this or a subsequent project, or you want to address this project? Okay, well, if you want to step up then and to the mic and identify yourself and address.
Timothy Plowman, 1499 Southwoods Drive, Waterville, Ohio. I had a couple questions about this. I understand as one of the conditions that the city is passing on, there's going to need to be a property split. That property split is obviously going to have serious ramifications for the other proposed development on this parcel. This, I'm sure you all are aware of the site plan that you've seen for the amphitheater. This will reduce the parking. Has the planning commission or council received any revised site plans, parking, anything like that in regards to the amphitheater?
Those would be irrelevant to tonight. We're dealing with a hotel.
That's right, but it's going to revise that parcel, so as long as there's going to be a
We're
property-
dealing with a hotel.
I know,
Anything
but
else is irrelevant, immaterial, and quite frankly, not for us to consider it tonight.
Okay, well, you're aware that on this exact same parcel, there has been no split, correct? No property split?
Well, in my staff report, I provided the planning commission with the current final site plan for the amphitheater that was approved by council. There was a green space area, that was undeveloped on the final site plan. That is the proposed location of the hotel, so there's no reduction in the number of parking spaces on the amphitheater property. So they're not reducing parking to build the hotel. The hotel is on an undeveloped portion of this parcel, which they would split off. So the amphitheater parcel as it exists conforms with the current approval of city council and the recommendation of the planning commission.
And this site plan is online?
It was the final site plan that, we can put it online if you like.
Yeah, I'd like to, because the current site plan online shows parking in that area.
I guess-
Anyway.
The planning commission has a copy of the current site plan, so your concern about that it wasn't proposed for parking, it was green space, open space, undeveloped space.
Okay. What is the council's definition in this recommendation of adequate staffing?
We certainly don't know hotel operations. They're going to be, I'm assuming, talking with an international or national operator. They determine what it takes to run a hotel safely, provide security, appropriate services, and again, that's not proper consideration for the request of a zoning permit.
Okay, so the adequate staffing, even though it's a condition that is being proposed by council, the definition of that is up to the operator and is not something that should be factored into.
Well, it's subject to review by everybody. If they say they're having 3 people for 100 suites, we're going to know that's inadequate.
So
But
you guys do have some idea of a number there, 3 people for 100 suites is not.
no, we're dealing with a conception right now. We will review this. The details come in later on all of these. And as you can see why, by recent history, nobody's going to have everything spent up front and then run into a million headaches that don't have anything to do with the granting of the use permit at this stage.
Which is fair, but I think we can all agree that it's better to put the horse in front of the cart in these type of things and have some sort of idea, because as members of the public, we do have the right to know what adequate staffing means, and it's a concern for all of us that are residents and taxpayers.
Well, bear in mind, conditional use, there's a continual monitoring. It's not like if you build a home and as long as you're not letting your weeds grow too high or whatever, you're good. But with the conditional use, there's a continual monitoring, so that is something that's in the code.
Absolutely, and I 100% respect that and agree with that. I think that if, folks attend council meetings over the last 6 months, you've seen there's a problem with the enforcement of folks who are violating their conditional use permits, particularly with the brewery and sound and stuff. So these are concerns that I feel like residents feel much more secure with when they're addressed ahead of time, not later. I would, if you wouldn't mind answering, sir, you said you have had some communications with national brands. Do you have any of the names of those brands? You said it wasn't Marriott, but.
I'd like to have you stand up to the microphone so it's on record to answer the question.
I guess.
We've had no contact with any other national brands, but I can tell you the ones that are on our list, Hilton, Hyatt, I mean, that's just to name a few, I mean, that type.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, we'll be talking to the quality national brands.
Thank you. And I guess the last thing I would bring up, I'm sure everyone here is aware of some of the issues that hotels have brought to Maumee, particularly that I brought these for. Gentlemen, have you heard of some of these in the past?
Yep.
I think that, hotels are one of those things where if they're done right, they can be great for a community. If not, there can be problems. We've seen that there are problems, particularly in that facility, due to them renting out rooms. I believe they're getting some sort of funding for it, regards to half of the house. Will there be any allowance of state, federal, local funding for individuals if there are empty hotel rooms during the week? Or is this a condition that council will put on it to, ensure safety of residents?
Those would be conditions addressed later. And again, the staff has pointed out, there's no living there long-term.
All right, I guess that'd be about it. I just would like to, have some of these things addressed. And, that way when folks come up and have these questions and feel like it's extremely vague, vagueness is where rumors here and all that stuff starts from. When things are well addressed from the beginning, a project is gonna be much more straightforward to folks. And I feel like that's been sorely lacking in the city, and I hope to see it improve in the future. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. So we have one other request, but I don't know, okay. All right, do you want to address this, or do you?
Just the hotel.
Oh, just the hotel, okay. Identify yourself for the record, your address then, please.
Matt Harrell, 1457 Southbridge Drive here in Waterville. Wasn't gonna let a hip replacement prevent me from coming tonight. I have rhetorical questions and a statement. I frankly don't need any input at this time. Do you feel that this committee did its best work reviewing the amphitheater conditional use permit? My answer would be no. There were many unanswered questions or simply insufficient answers. The committee's vote with so many unknowns was a breach of trust to the citizens
Thank you for your comments. Any further questions or discussion from the commission? All right.
The concern's well taken, I guess I just wanna add that, and I think we all understand and know the MOME issues that have happened, I think that.
Dave, you speak up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I gotta get close to my phone here. I think we're all aware of what's happening in Maumee or what has happened in Maumee, and that's like all over small town USA. A lot of those small town hotels, motels are like that. You know, you get a bad seat or you get something. Hopefully they will be able to police that well. Not just our force, our wonderful force, but our citizens, of course. So we'll put some teeth in. If this passes, we can put some teeth in these conditions and monitor it and listen to the people who live in the city, you know, as things progress, and if they see something that's out of line, bring it to our attention, and we can face it. Fair enough?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the conditional use to council. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Mr. Hirsch?
Yes.
Mr. Kircher?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman?
Yes.
Mr. Bergmeyer?
Yes.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a conditional use permit for a self-storage facility at 1400 block of Prairie Boulevard. It's up for recommendations to council. John, do you want to share the
Okay.
administration's analysis
you.
and recommendations?
This is a proposed conditional use permit for a self-storage unit facility located in the 1400 block of Prairie Boulevard. So this would be located adjacent to the Waterville Place Apartments and across the street from Story Point Senior Living. The applicant is proposing a 6.7 acre self-storage unit facility, which would require, and they are proposing to split off from the existing parcel, which is parcel 9656053. This particular project received a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals from the off-street parking and loading requirements, and that was approved July 13th, 2023. The project is required to have 9 parking spaces, including 1 handicap spot on the site. This also was a parcel where there was a request for a zoning change from commercial to multifamily, and that was proposed for 12 acres of this site for phase 3 of the Waterville Place Apartments, and that was denied by council on January 9th, 2023. The proposed facility would be consist of 538 units, self-storage units, and there would be 7 buildings on the site. The Board of Zoning Appeals looked at the parking requirements that currently exist for self-storage unit facilities, and when looking at other communities in the area, our requirements were a little more restrictive than they felt they needed to be. For example, Sylvania Township, Springfield Township, Myclova Township, they require 4 to 5 spaces per facility plus 1 additional space for employees. Our requirements require 5 parking spaces plus 1 for each 10 storage units, so that would be 59 parking spaces. And if you've ever been to a self-storage unit facility, you don't see 59 cars parked anywhere, so that was part of their consideration. They looked at other requirements in the area, and they granted that variance. Again, the enclosed site plan is for conditional use permit only, so the applicant would have to come back to the Planning Commission and City Council with a detailed site plan that would provide information on fencing, lighting, landscaping, that type of thing. The self-storage unit is located near some multifamily developments, so you could look at it as an amenity because there aren't any in the city. We have one self-storage unit facility on the Anthony Wayne Trail. It's a non-conforming use, so it can't be expanded. So that use is, there exists a self-storage unit, but it's non-conforming, so it can't be expanded. So, on the one hand, this is amenity that the city lacks, and you're in an area where people might need storage. The other aspect is, that it would, if it's done the right way, it could be a transitional use between the apartment complex and other developments to the south. On the other hand, 6.7 acres, you might have one employee working there. You're not going to generate a lot of income tax. So I guess the question is this the highest and best use for this commercially zoned piece of property? So those are some questions to consider. If the Planning Commission is interested in recommending approval to City Council, I did have 6 conditions that you should consider. One of the conditions is which I think is important. It should comply with the commercial overlay district requirements because it is in an area that is fully developed and it should complement the area. It shouldn't be a detriment to the area. And unfortunately, a lot of these facilities are very unattractive from the exterior. So if the applicant was willing to provide us with a design for the exterior that made the facility blend in with the surrounding developments, I think it could be considered to be an amenity and a transition from apartment use to commercial use.
Do you have just in terms of commercial use, highest and best use, and commercial spaces?
Well, I guess if it's built, it's not going to be used for anything other than that.
Right.
That use, but it's vacant, and the property owner came in with a zoning change that wasn't approved for multifamily. So other uses could be used on this particular piece of property, but on the other hand, if it was done well and it blended in with the other commercial developments in the area, you could consider it to be an amenity that we don't have any self-storage units in the city, and the one that we do have is a non-conforming use and it can't be expanded. So we have gas stations in the community. They don't provide a lot of tax revenue, but it's a need that people in the community have. So that is part of my staff report here, and I do have 6 conditions that if the commission was willing to consider those, that you could recommend approval to City Council.
What impact in terms of the master plan and relative to this just being utilized just for commercial purposes?
The master plan has it as a commercial use. With the last use that was proposed, that was changing it from commercial to multifamily, and that wasn't in compliance
Right.
with the master plan. So I guess from it is a commercial use. That's the underlying zoning district. It's conditional, so you can put conditions on the operation, construction, location of this. But again, there are other uses that, from the city's perspective, could be a higher and better use in terms of income tax and financial impact on the city. So I guess in a general sense, it does comply with the master plan, but again, it's a conditional use, and to approve it and not have it be compatible with the surrounding land uses, I guess I would recommend not doing that. I don't think that's a good idea, but again, if it was complied with the commercial overlay requirements. An effort was made for it to blend in with the surrounding developments. You know, it could be an amenity that people would appreciate, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we can control the appearance and all that, but then it just doesn't lend itself to what normally, one normally thinks of commercial.
Right,
Whether it's
right,
downtown Waterville or whatever.
right.
Okay, we'll have at this point, we'd have the applicant, if you wanna identify yourself for the record.
Don Feller with Feller Pinch and Associates representing the applicant. I think Mr. Gokenhour pretty much explained it, just to kind of reiterate, it is as we talked earlier about the conditional uses, it is a permitted use in this district with conditional use. That's why we're here tonight to ask for conditional use. Just to give you a little bit of background, just familiar about the project, the location is to the north of us, immediately north is a large stormwater retention area and an apartment complex. To the east is across the street, across Spring Boulevard is a Story Point complex. To the west, of course, is 24. To the south is commercially zoned property that's currently undeveloped. Hopefully that someday it will be developed as commercial use. The developer intends to do some pretty extensive landscaping along the front of the project, along Craig Boulevard, which will, kind of keep it looking good, sort of screen it off from the road. Again, looking at all the other ways around it, you're looking at on the apartment complex, the road, potential commercial. So, just one thing, you mentioned the taxes. Certainly there's not a lot of income tax going to be generated from this property. However, certainly there will be property tax value. But the other consideration is that this does not put a burden on the schools or the police department, fire department, like other types of projects could. The project will be locked 24 hours a day. So it can only be accessed to, if you have a code, whatever it is, so it's supposed to be secure. With regards to being not being attractive, certainly it's a self-storage unit. There's not a lot you can do, but I think the key there is that it's really not with good landscaping up front to screen it from Craig Boulevard. There's really not a lot around it that really need to be screened from that attractive. I do one question I would like to clarify, John, is you mentioned being conforming to the commercial overlay district regulations. If I'm not, are we in the overlay district, or you're just saying that we should comply with that?
Well, I guess I'm saying as a condition of approval, you should comply with those standards. And you're technically outside of the commercial overlay district, so. Now, I mean, you have the undeveloped part to the south. I mean, you'd be willing to do some landscaping, creative, design on that south part that you're gonna see as you go around Prairie Boulevard. You'll see that until it's developed. The parcel next to it is developed.
I obviously don't have a landscaping plan yet, but I believe that, if I remember correctly, that the landscaping could kind of wrap around so that as you're approaching it from the south, northbound, you really would be seeing the whole thing, so. And I believe a landscaping plan is part of the condition.
Right,
Okay.
it would be in a detailed site plan that you have to bring back to the planning commission.
Looking at your conceptual plan, I guess like you just said, landscaping, approaching it from the south, you show a 2-foot landscape strip from the parking to the property line, so I don't know how much landscaping you can fit in that area to screen it. And I guess as far as providing landscaping up front, that's great, but again, just kind of the regular shape of the lot. You only have, maybe a couple 100 feet of frontage, then it kind of opens pretty wide up to 400 or so feet. I don't know how much that's really gonna, hide the buildings, but I guess I have a question. This, and maybe you can answer, maybe you can't. This was kind of in here quite a few years ago as a Class A office complex, potentially. I think with previous previous, I don't know if it's the same entity, the owner, but what happened to that potential office complex here, or?
On this particular property,
Right.
this site, to be honest with you, I'm not familiar with that. If it was us, I
Okay.
don't remember.
Yeah, I think Mr. Yunker could probably talk about that.
That was an office building, a relocation with a large company from Arrowhead that was going to, there was a tenant that wanted to own their own building, and we were gonna develop it for them. It was on about a 15-acre parcel, and you're correct, it was right at this location. But it's no longer a viable project. In fact, it's been dead for about 8 years.
But I just was
It was a long
curious.
time.
Yeah, I know, I remembered, I was just curious
Yeah,
what happened with that, but,
yeah, it was just a deal that didn't transpire.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
I did mention it, as Mr. Gokenhour indicated in the report, with the apartments, the bill as a single-family developer in the Prairie Boulevard area, as well as the rest of Waterville, we believe there is a demand, a market demand and a need for this type of project in this area. And being it's a commercial district that permits this as commercial use, it would seem to be appropriate to do that.
Don, I've seen some of these types of facilities look awful. I'm sure you have too, and some that look really, really nice. We'll be able to, kind of, wouldn't be objectionable to the materials that would be involved in the building, or?
That would obviously be on my scope, but the developers here are just looking for
Okay.
the estimate.
Don,
We've done that in the past.
the turning radiuses around the buildings, I don't think you'd be able to get a fire truck, a garbage truck, a large moving van around the perimeter of the site. I think you'd have to widen those lanes to about 40 feet.
Yeah, I'm not sure the lanes need to be widened. We'll have to look at the corners where to make the turns, look at the turning radiuses, during our detailed site plan. We'll evaluate that, make sure that it's suitable for those type of movements.
Okay.
Certainly that's something we'll need to look at.
Are there any,
That is in your.
are there any industry standards for storage units for turnarounds and safety and fire service?
Typically with fire service, as long as they can get around it, all the way around the project, is what most fire departments want to look for. We do have, that ability, but as Mr. Gokenhour mentioned, there's some concern about turning radiuses at the corners and
Yeah.
things, which we'll certainly take a good look at that when we do the detailed design, and then of course you'll have to, the fire department will have to approve that.
Sure.
Before it be finalized.
Yeah.
I guess I would just comment on when this site was before us previously with the multifamily zoning change, we kind of discussed, this seemed to be prime real estate for a higher commercial use that would generate property tax. And maybe Mr. Gokenhour can explain, I believe this parcel is part of a TIF where really there is no property tax, but increased values are paid back to the city, or could you explain that?
The TIF, and I guess we'd have to make sure this particular parcel's on the TIF, but how it was constructed is there's when it was enacted, there was a certain base level of property tax that would go to the school and the city and the county, and then any increase in that would go back to the original developer of Commerce Village, the Kroger's, and it'd be used to pay the debt service on storm sewers, sanitary sewers, water lines, things like that. And I believe our TIF is a 30-year TIF, and I think we're at about year 18 or something to that effect. So if this would be on the TIF, then any increase in the value would go towards the payment of the debt service. So if you develop this whole particular area that's in the TIF and it increased in value significantly and paid up the debt service, the TIF would end early. So it wouldn't go on forever. It goes on until either the term of the agreement or if the debt is paid off. So.
Okay, thank you.
But I don't know if this particular parcel's in the TIF. The Kroger parcel obviously is in the TIF, and then other parcels to the south of that are in the TIF.
According to Aries, I had looked at, it had comments that it was part of the
Is it?
TIF. But again, I guess kind of back to that discussion, and when we looked at the multifamily, we thought this was sort of prime real estate for the city to potentially get income tax revenue, and then this obviously development here isn't gonna generate much income tax. And to me, looking at it, you just pretty much squeeze as much as you can onto the site. We're not looking at the site plan, and I guess that happens later. But with that said, you know, I just don't feel comfortable with approving it. That's my thoughts on it, but I think there's a higher and better use and that would benefit the city.
I can appreciate that, but I would also point out, as you mentioned, it's been 18 years since the TIF was established, and the property's still undeveloped, as well as substantial other properties that are undeveloped, so, you know, at least, and the other thing I still want to go back is that I think it does, as Mr. Gokenhart mentioned in his report, it does provide an amenity to the community that's not available now, and you
Right.
have to think about where else would you put it, you know, in the community, where it would be acceptable.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. And my experience too, though, is these always expand. This is the footprint now, and if they get the green light, then, you know, 2 years or whatever, if something doesn't happen, which who knows, they're gonna wanna add another row of buildings here and there, so we've got a Kroger, a shopping center, then storage units, and then apartments.
Well, I pointed out that before that can happen, they have to come back to you guys. with
Right.
counsel.
But I guess this is setting a precedent, kinda to say yes, then potentially could have to say yes again or whatever.
Well,
That's just my thoughts.
Yeah, a lot of times too, Doug, I mean, you see these as a one-off opportunity, like the units over on Waterville, Monclova, and Dutch. I mean, more of a one-off. And as Doug mentioned, it is prime real estate, and you can see it from the expressway. I mean, I'm just having a little heartburn on the use of it.
Well, when we come down to that evaluation, we're back to the 114805 criteria
Yep.
for a special use, which is the same as the evaluation for a conditional. So if we don't find those factors to be in this project, you certainly can turn it down. If you find those factors, you can certainly approve it.
Well, I'll make a motion that we do not recommend the project to council.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I guess just to clarify, you're recommending disapproval, or is it?
Disapproval.
Or is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Any discussion before roll call? Okay, roll call?
Mr. Parrish?
Yes.
Mr. Kircher?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman?
Yes.
Mr. Burkmeyer?
Yes.
Thank you, sir, for attending. We appreciate your insights and your comments. The next item is discussion item, architectural review committee with our recommendations to council. John?
Yes, council has talked about establishing a architectural review committee, and I copied the City of Sylvania section for your, I guess, review and consideration. So when you read through their requirements, they have an architectural board of review. Their architectural review districts are overlay districts, so it's very similar to the commercial overlay district that we have. The city of Sylvania has 3 districts, and 2 are historical, and the other one is a gateway district. So again, if you read through here, you'll see a lot of some of which is exactly the same as what's in our commercial overlay district. So I guess, you know, in these 2 particular cases, as a conditional use, you could make them comply with the commercial overlay district standards in terms of appearance and landscaping and things like that. But if it's outside the commercial overlay district and it's not a conditional use, then, you know, it's permitted by right. So you have less control over the appearance of the building and the development. So I guess the idea of what Sylvania is doing is you know, they have a gateway architectural district, and looking at ours, some of the areas where there isn't a part of the areas that aren't covered by our existing commercial overlay are Parade Boulevard, certain parts of Parade Boulevard. So the idea would be maybe you extend the commercial overlay district to all of Parade Boulevard, and I guess any commercial use that would be above a C1, which would be like a neighborhood commercial type use that are on small lots and things like that. The historic district board has control over the downtown area. So when you think about what's left in terms of commercial, it's really Parade Boulevard. So we could probably accomplish the same thing if we made a recommendation to council to consider extending or enlarging the commercial overlay to include all of Parade Boulevard, or anything, you know, from a C2 and above, or a C3 and above.
Yeah,
But, you know, that's if for your consideration. You guys can read this over and see what you think, but I think you'll see it's very similar to what Sylvania does in their commercial district, not the 2 historical districts, but the commercial district. And, you know, we could do similar things there. And, you know, unlike a historic district where, you know, your idea is you want to keep the historical integrity of the area, a commercial district can be, you know, you might like the color that they use and somebody else might not. So it's more subjective, and I think you need to try to keep a standard. And to be honest, I think you've done a pretty good job with that. The Kroger development, the AutoZone, the O'Reilly's, the Speedway. I mean, they're similar, and I think you guys make an effort to make sure that if it's in the commercial overlay district, that the conditions are, you know, they bring in an elevation drawing, renderings. You make sure it's not out of the ordinary, and it's what you've approved in the past. So, you know, I think we could accomplish the same thing.
I'm strongly in favor of it. I remember spending a lot of time on the overlay zone. We put that in, and I think it's just excellent. And given Waterville, I'm strongly in favor of it. And then you have a kind of a game plan or whatever. I mean, what a developer or whatever, rather than just going through the conditional use or whatever, that we have the criteria. And we should have a criteria that there's some standards. I think that's good for Waterville. It's good for the developer, and you know, you want to maintain the look and the vision of Waterville. So quite frankly, I'm strongly in favor of that.
No, I agree. We need some kind of a simple template, or maybe not simple, but it kind of keeps the understanding that everything's consistent,
Right.
rather than doing everything piecemeal or every time.
And you know, you have the 64 overlay that, you know, it's 600 feet, and then I believe the commercial overlay is 120 feet from the center line of the road. So, I mean, you just make it for the entire zoning district.
Big
That way,
blanket of, yeah.
then it's one district and you don't have a property that's not in it that
Right.
we can't. So, obviously you get in a district, there's a boundary and one part of the commercial district doesn't have to comply, but the other part does. So you got two parcels next to each other that look obviously different. So that's kind of contradictory to what you want to accomplish. So why not just have it over the entire commercial district?
No,
That way
I-
it's
No,
consistent.
I strongly agree. I agree that for the developer and everybody else. And then if it's a conditional use, you still have, you have pretty much two ways to control it. I mean, first of all, you got the overlay district, but then if it's a special use, you still have the option to have whatever additional items that you feel are necessary or appropriate for the special use
Right.
designation. So, yeah,
Again, I know we're working on the master plan again, and this certainly would go hand in glove with that. One of the things that we may want to think about is a zoning moratorium until those two things are completed, so that we don't have things that we don't want, number one, and there won't be a rush to squeeze less attractive things, let's say, through while all this is pending, because we don't move at a fast pace intentionally at times, because we want to do a good job when we finally shut with it.
I'm in agreement with that unless there's any legal issue. It's,
Well, that's my job to take a peek, but I believe I've seen it before, and if I have,
Yeah.
we can do it.
right, great. So it appears that's the consensus of the planning commission to go forward on that.
Yes.
And I can come up with some draft regulations at a future meeting you guys can look at in terms of expanding that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can make a recommendation to council, and I guess council can consider the future, when they wanna do it and, that type of thing.
All right, that's great.
Do we address a moratorium now at this point, Phil, or how do we handle that?
Well, if there's strong feelings, it's just a recommendation to the powers that be to look at that and think about it, because we're gonna spend a lot of money on the updated
Right.
plan, and to have things get done before it's done is counterproductive, to put it bluntly.
I think it'd be good to go for it, and, if you wear a developer's hat, you wanna know what the procedure and the process is in all fairness, and then you're not spending a lot of time.
What's the anticipated completion of that?
The master plan, or?
Yes.
Well, we'd probably start that next year, beginning of next year. But I don't see the problem with working on some tweaks to the commercial overlay district between now and then. We can talk about it at a future meeting.
Is it feasible, John, to inform people as they come forward to wanting to rezone or conditional use, to let them know we are in the works of?
Yeah,
doing
no,
something
I
like
think that's a good idea. I think that's a good idea to let them know we're
Put on-
we're looking at changing the regulations. But I guess the quicker we change them, the
that? Right, agreed.
Phil, do you need a motion on that at this point from the planning commission?
If that's going to be the recommendation, that's the way I would approach it,
All
yes.
right.
Again,
I'll make.
I guess before your motion, I just wanted to make a few comments. So, yeah, I guess I'm in favor of adding the architectural review as well. I guess my question is this body the right body to have the expertise to review the architecture? That was sort of the gist, I thought,
right.
why this issue came up potentially, and
I get, when you hear the word architectural review, I think you think everyone's an architect, but
right.
the planning commission in Sylvania, the city of Sylvania, is the architectural board of review. So the only difference is the mayor of Sylvania happens to be an architect, and he's the only one. So they have an architect on the board. I mean, we could at some point in the future, we could have an architect that's a planning commission commissioner, or you could always ask for a opinion from an architect.
Yeah, I guess I I would.
developing standards or, you know, having a opinion on a certain development.
Well, you want it properly vetted, so, I mean, you know, we have legal counsel, we can certainly have an architect that can
And, you know,
appropriately advise.
the idea being, again, is you don't, if you don't have a historical district where you have a set architectural style, the commercial standards are basically what city council and the planning commission decide they are, and it's subjective to a point that some people are gonna like it, some people aren't gonna like it, but if you're consistent throughout, I think that's the idea, that you have a consistent standard and you're taking it, following through with it for the whole district, so. But what those standards are, and again, I think that that's kind of a subjective thing, and you have to be careful regulating standards for new developments, because, you know, 10 years from now, you know, it could look like the Brady Bunch house or something. Everybody liked it then, but no one likes it now, so, you know, that's the thing about it.
It's making a comeback. I see somebody building one on Alvin near Salisbury, so.
So, you know, one person's palace now is, they wanna tear it down in 20 years. So, that's the issue with, you're not looking at a historic district standards. And, you know, Sylvania, they had an architectural firm develop standards for their district, historical district. You know, this is a Queen Anne style or whatever, and you wanna keep the same standard, but a commercial area is always kind of evolving and being redeveloped and reconfigured, and so it's hard to come up with specific things that you want them to do. They're more of a general, and I guess when you read the Sylvania requirements in the Gateway Architectural District, it's more general in nature what they want. And I guess the idea is, what do you want the commercial district to look like in terms of, you know, reinvestment, redevelopment, appearance, aesthetics, signage, you know. And again, I think the city's done a pretty good job with that. We don't have billboards and things all over the place, and buildings painted pink, and, you know, where you see in other places. So what do you regulate? So.
Well, I'm in favor of it, you know, I'm making a motion then that we, according to Phil's recommendation here, that you know, that we utilize that. Phil, do you want to properly word that?
Well, I would say at this time, we certainly are in favor of enlarging the commercial overlay to set forth more uniform standards and regulations. And we want to look into the moratorium while we do the new master plan and the commercial overlay, so that it's not patchy once it's put into effect.
That will be, in essence, my motion is articulated by Mr. Dombey. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Parrish?
Yes.
Mr. Kircher?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman?
Yes.
Mr. Bergmeyer?
Yes.
All right. Matt? I had another request for.
He spoke. He
Oh,
spoke already.
okay, all right. Okay, I guess we're good. Anything else, John? No, the next meeting is September 12th at 7 o'clock PM. Yes? Mr. Mayor?
Identify yourself.
Thank you, Tim Pedro, mayor of the great city of Waterville. I'm not an architect, by the way, but I work with them. No, seriously, I get a chance to attend various committee meetings, and I try to stay in my lane, if that's the right term. But I do want to say thank you for the dedication that this body presents to our city, and takes issues at hand and studies them
And also, you know, we have a finance committee, I do sit on that, so I get a chance to interact with that committee. Public Works, Public Safety, Tree Commission, the Planning Commission, and the Chamber of Commerce, and CIC. So it's a dedication of our volunteers from the city that participate, and want to say thanks. And also, we have the best, one of the best police departments in this state. And I want you all to know that. They follow the rules, day in and day out. I'll give you an example. Joe, I don't know his name, but there was a police officer a couple weeks ago that got a call. There was an elderly lady driving the wrong way on 24. It appears this lady, she was elderly, she was confused, but it appeared that she was traveling at least 4 or 5 miles before one of our police officers also had to go the wrong way to pull this lady over. God only knows what could have happened. So again, our public works, public safety, police, fire, thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly appreciate the efforts of the police officers. Thank you for your service. Anything else, John, before we adjourn?
No.
All right. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn? So moved.
Second. Roll call?
Mr. Parrish?
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman?
Yes.